One of the most magnificent shows in the entire galaxy is going on right overhead, and most people don't even realize it. Baby stars already giants being born, the fluorescent interstellar wispy specters of a long-dead behemoth, rogue stars adrift, racing freely through the night sky on the galactic odyssey, a mighty star possibly about to explode so brightly that one day, for a short while, it will outshine even the moon. Binary stars swirling like figure skaters around each other, and perhaps even possibly a black hole. All found in one familiar location in the nighttime sky that most people just absently glance at, if they only had an idea how much drama is going on with that one constellation. Now, nearly everyone on Earth has looked up at the nighttime sky at one point in their life and noticed this iconic group of stars at least once, even if just briefly, and Orion has been part of humanity since prehistory. In West Germany, a carving of Orion was found engraved onto a mammoth ivory that's dated roughly to be about 35,000 years old. So even back then, our ancestors stared up into the night sky and kind of with curiosity and awe towards this celestial treasure trove that we know as Orion today. And if only they knew, like we do now, all that Orion was hosting besides simple stars, because believe me, there's a lot going on up there. So allow me to take you on a tour of this spectacular heavenly ensemble, and I'll include some intriguing tidbits that most casual viewers would never realize. How you doing? My name is David Hoyt, and you're watching Celestial Safaris. I work in an observatory, one right here, and I do scientific outreach to the community, educating people on all things related to space and astronomy and the stars. So allow me to take you on a tour today of the Orion Nebula, the Orion Constellation, everything that's going on up there. It's going to be very thorough. You can use it as a guide kind of moving forward if you ever catch yourself looking at the Orion Constellation and just want to know all that's up there, because a lot of iconic, really famous objects in space and things you've seen photos of are within this one constellation. So here we go. The constellation itself resembles an hourglass with a belt of three distinct stars at its center. Now, it's said to form the image of the Greek mythical hunter Orion. It's complete with like a club held high as if ready to strike, a shield thrusted forward, and even like a sword sheathed in its scabbard hanging off its side. Now, Orion hosts several famous stars that are so large that their true size is kind of really hard to fathom. Forming the hunter's right shoulder, which is the left upper corner of the hourglass from like you and I's perspective, is a red supergiant that's been in the news a lot recently called Beetle Juice. That's Alpha Orinus. Now, it's burning stoplight red in the nighttime sky, and Beetle Juice has recently been observed dimming intensity. Astronomers can't be entirely sure, but they do know that this is exactly what Betelgeuse is expected to do just right before it kind of expires in a blaze of glory known as a supernova. So think of like your car right when you're about to run out of gas, it sort of starts sputtering, and then it kind of gets a little more juice and get another block, then it starts sputtering again. Well, stars on their deathbed kind of do the same thing. They'll start dimming and then brightening and dimming and brightening. That's sputtering. So when Betelgeuse eventually does kind of blow, she'll momentarily for a few weeks shine brighter than the moon in the nighttime sky, so she'll be casting shadows herself at night. And as amazing as this occurrence will be, when it does happen, it could happen anytime like between now and the next 100,000 years. So, which in universal time span is basically tomorrow. Luckily, Earth is pretty safe from Betelgeuse when it goes supernova, because Betelgeuse is located about 624 light years away. But the leftover gases and debris will one day form the closest nebula to our star system, and it'll be complete with a baby stellar nursery of new stars being born inside, and the nebula will kind of forever alter the night sky. It'll be a really beautiful addition to all of our evening vistas. It'll be right up there. Now, the other shoulder is Bellatrix, Gamma Orinus. She's the Amazon star, and she's the closest star in the entire constellation to Earth. She's about 244 light years away, and she's a blue giant, so she's a big girl. She's not big enough to go out in a blaze of glory, but being a B-type star, she burns very hot. One thing about B-type stars is I kind of liken them to rock stars, meaning that they party really hard, they burn through their mojo quick, and they all invariably die young. And that's going to be Bellatrix's story too. Now, the brightest star in the entire bunch, it's really noticeable, is Beta Orinus. Now, that's Rigel, and Rigel forms the left foot of the constellation. It's also a B-type blue supergiant, but she's really, really older than her sister, and she's in the later stages of her life. She's 70 times wider than her own sun, and already kind of, burning through all of her fuel. So she may be very bright, but she's actually kind of cooling down. In her prime, she was about 3 times hotter than she is today. So we know she's kind of getting up there in age. Now, scientists know her time is up soon. They're just not really sure when she's going to exit the stage or how. She may become a supernova, kind of like Beetle Juice, and be a really bright kind of like a flash of light in the nighttime sky for, several, months. Or she might just collapse into like a white dwarf and just kind of leave like a gaseous shell of her exterior, and which will then kind of expand outwardly, which is pretty much what our own sun will do too. Our sun's going to turn into a white dwarf one day. Now, Safe forms the foot and, the other foot, and then Misa is, which is actually composed of many stars. It just looks like one. That forms the head. Now, the belt of Orion is 3 stars. That's Mintaka, Alnilam, and Alnitak. And roughly translated, they kind of are all references to pearls in Arabic. So it's almost like a string of pearls is how they kind of likened it back then. Now, Mintaka is actually a binary star system. So that means it's 2 stars kind of rotating around a common center of gravity. They kind of partner up and kind of dance spinning around each other. Now, the pair completes a rotation once every 5.5 days. So that's really, really fast. Mintaka is very frenetic. Alnilam is the middle star, and she's kind of quickly burning through her fuel too. Then Alnitak is the outer star furthest to the left, and Alnitak saw Mintaka's binary showmanship and said, hold my beer, deciding to one-up her neighbor and become a triple star system. So there's actually 3 stars kind of rotating around each other. Now we're going to return to Alnitak a little bit later in this presentation because there's a lot more than meets the eye and a lot of really famous things that go on right around that star that you really have no idea without getting a really strong telescope to take a look at it. Now, in the eastern sky in general is a massive, humongous ring of barely visible dust that's kind of slowly expanding. It was discovered only recently because it's really, really hard to detect. It's that faint. But when I say massive, I'm like talking 330 light years wide. So for scale, that would take up the same portion as like 27 moons sitting side by side. Now, our nearest star, which is just slightly about 4 light years away, Proxima Centauri. So if you want to get an idea of the vastness of this like ring that's up in the kind of surrounding the Orion Constellation, that gets you an idea. This thing is really big at 330 light years across. Now, this hoop of interstellar dust is thought to be the violent result of a very, very large supernova. And on the edge of this ring, at its densest part, a section is coalesced into one of the most kind of beautiful and brightest nebulas in our nighttime sky. It's so close and bright that you can actually kind of see it with the naked eye, and this is called the Great Orion Nebula. It's M42. Now, if you look at Orion tonight and you kind of search for his sword hanging in between his legs, you'll see this nebula for yourself. You'll notice it's like one star up from the bottom will be this kind of milky white, blue, fuzzy star that no matter how much you stare at it, you can't get it to really come in focus. That's because it's not a star. That is the Orion Nebula. And it's shining back at you roughly from about 1,500 light years away. As nebulas go, it's also called an emission nebula. The bright ultraviolet light of the stars within are energizing, kind of ionizing this stellar dust, making up the nebula, which is what's causing it to glow. It's kind of a similar process that you'd see in like a neon light or a fluorescent light bulb. Now, at the core of this nebula, powering this illumination, while simultaneously kind of feeding off the stardust there, is something called a trapezium, or Theta Orinus. It's a stellar nursery of about 6 baby stars that are mere infants in the scale of things. However, don't let baby fool you. They're not exactly small. A lot of them are B-type stars. And a lot of them are those O-type stars, which are very rare. They're the super blue giants. And some of them are already 100 times bigger than our sun, and they're still babies. So, but if you look through it with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, you kind of look at the Orion Nebula, you'll see this very readily. It does look like a trapezoidal shape. And 2 of those stars in there are also more binary star systems. So the Orion Constellation just loves binary and trinary star systems. Now, the trapezium is something kind of a mystery to astronomers because a few strange things are kind of observed in it. Mainly, some of the stars in the trapezium are running amok. They're kind of racing through space a lot faster than they should be, and they're kind of scattering in different directions. They're not really being held in place. Now, that's a phenomena called runaway stars. And to make things even more wild, some of these stars were kind of ejected and hurled out of the star cluster like shot put, while other stars were kind of slung inwards and they're colliding into one particularly massive star inside that scientists now kind of suspect is actually turned into or collapsed down into a small black hole about 200 times the mass of our sun. That'd make it an intermediate-sized black hole, to be honest. So if you want to look at the nighttime sky and you want to be a smarty pants and point out to someone else where a black hole is, or just want to see for yourself where a black hole is likely to be hiding, there you go. Look no further than good old Orion. Find his sword, find the nebula, and go, there's a black hole. Now, as to why these stars are zinging about, well, scientists kind of have a few theories they proposed. One is that a supernova kind of blasted all the surviving stars outward into space, and the other is that any kind of congested nursery, like gravitational attraction, sort of has drawn these stars closer together, and that would in turn kind of begin to make them spin around each other. And once spun up and they got enough energy, these kind of stars just kind of fling apart from each other, and they're going to go in opposite directions. Either way, these babies are being kicked out of the nest, out of this little stellar nursery here. Immediately adjacent to the Orion Nebula, separated by a black curtain of dark dust, is a luminous cloud that kind of resembles like a tadpole to me, or maybe like a fat comma. And that's called Deyon Nebula, or M43. Now, a lot of people confuse Deyon Nebula with M42, the Orion Nebula, and they kind of consider them one and the same, but they absolutely are not. Deyon Nebula is like so close visually to the Orion Nebula that most will assume it's a smaller nebula that's just part of the big one, but it's actually about another 100 light years past or further away than the Orion Nebula, so it's nowhere even close to the Orion Nebula. It's just that they happen to be optically so close to each other from our vantage point. They look like they're part of the same, but they're not. Now, the Deyon is kind of interesting because a lot of scientists speculate that the nebula is mainly like consisting of like really dark coal, like dust. It's like a cocoon kind of masking the light of the stars inside of it from the rest of the galaxy. And that we on Earth are basically looking into the heart of this cocoon through the one open end of this like funnel or canal. So if you're somewhere else in the galaxy, another star system, and you're looking at the Orion Nebula, you would not see Deyon next to it. It would just look like a black kind of like chunk of space because this dust would obscure all the stars in it. Now, at the bottom of Orion's sword, you'll see the brightest object. It's a binary star that I can hardly pronounce, Hatsa or Iota or Orinus. And what makes a Hatsa so interesting is that it's composed of like a really ancient, massive O-type star. That's super blue giant. And it's got a couple much smaller B-type star kind of next to it. That's about half of its age. So it's a duo again, binary stars with the Orion Constellation being like a theme here. Now, scientists believe that this smaller star was actually not native. It was kind of captured when it kind of passed a little bit too close by to this giant O-type star. And it got trapped in its gravity well. Now the two just simply kind of rotate around each other, kind of like any other binary star. But this one's a little different. It has it emits a really intense source of X-rays because of its interaction with each other. So that's another kind of neat little star too, if you kind of like can appreciate that. Now, a short distance above like the M42, M43 pair is a second hand, is like a whimsically named kind of nebula that's kind of seen in a lot of photos of the Great Orion Nebula. A lot of people have no idea what it is. That's the Running Man Nebula, and it's really a combination of three closely packed nebulas, NGC 1973, NGC 1975, and NGC 1977. The cluster as a whole is named after NGC 1977, but in a lot of photos you'll notice that NGC 1977 is not really as bright as the other two prior mentioned nebulas, but altogether they do kind of resemble like a stick figure kind of running across a crosswalk, like in a crosswalk signal, which is where it gets its name, the Running Man, from. You may be able to see Running Man in a really dark kind of clear place with the naked eye on a very clear night and definitely through a telescope, but you're not going to be able to see the man inside. That's just too faint to kind of distinguish. You're going to need to get a decent telescope, take a lot of photos that are stacked on top of each other, and to kind of bring out that faint of a feature in it. If you kind of allow your eye to kind of continue panning up the hilt of Orion's sword, you'll see a cluster of about 20 faint stars kind of closely grouped together. This is NGC 1981. Now, even under a small telescope, heck, even binoculars, it'll look like a splattering of like blue sapphires that someone just kind of tossed up into the nighttime sky. I remember being kind of ignorant of NGC 1981 even existing, and then when I first got a telescope as a kid and started looking at the Orion Nebula and Running Man, I kept panning up and I was kind of like, what the heck is this? I had no idea they were even up there. But if you got the opportunity, take a look. They're really pretty. Kind of reminds me of the Pleiades a little bit. And that's definitely something you want to check out. Now, I want to return back to Alatak, the star I spoke about earlier, which again makes up the left side of Orion's belt. It's got a lot more than meets the eye, as I mentioned. And with a mid-sized telescope, you can kind of see directly descending below it as like a bright, like kind of glowing red pillar of light. It kind of seems like it's gently drifting to the right side, and dead center in this like a nebula of gas is something immediately recognizable to anybody who's into astronomy. It's a black silhouette resembling kind of like the knight chess piece in the game chess. This is the Horsehead Nebula, or IC 434. It's also known as like Bernard 33 after one of the first guys to describe it, and a lot of stuff in that region of the Orion constellation is named after Bernard. But the horse shape is actually caused by like a chunk of like dark interstellar dust kind of hiding everything that's behind it. But it's really iconic. You've seen it before, I'm sure, in photos somehow. But that's where it's located if you've ever wondered. Look at Orion's belt, the left star, and just hanging right below it is the Horsehead Nebula. Now, a close neighbor to the Horsehead Nebula, immediately to the left and a little bit up from Analtak, is the gorgeous Flame Nebula, NGC 2024. It's one of my favorite nebulas there are. It is just beautiful. It's a stunning juxtaposition of like dark dust and lacy kind of glowing veins. It kind of, to me, resembles like a pastel stained kind of quilted maple or something that you would see like a flame maple on a guitar. It's just really pretty. At the heart of this flame nebula are several juvenile stars. Many are seen with like circumstellar disks forming around them. Now, when you see a circumstellar disk forming, that means this stars or these stars are busy forming planets around them. So there are solar systems being formed there. So the Flame Nebula is a kind of an interesting little like factoid to kind of keep in mind when you're again looking at that left star of the belt of Orion, Analtak. Now, because Analtak's so bright, it kind of floods the space around it and washes out most of the views of the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula. But again, powerful enough telescope, stack some images, get a low ISO, keep your aperture open a long time, you'll get glimpses of both, particularly if in a really dark place with good Bortle ratings. Bortle is like a classification of how dark the nighttime sky is and how much you can see. So if you're in a place that's got a fairly low rating, meaning it's pretty dark and you can see a lot, good time to take a look at Analtak and check out the Flame and the Horsehead Nebula. Now, the Orion constellation still has a couple more secrets revealed, especially if you're like a budding space enthusiast here. A modest distance above and a little bit to the right of Analtak on your way to Beetle Juice is a lesser known but really spectacular nebula that's simply gorgeous called M78 or Messier 78. It's named after a French astronomer named Charles Messier, who kind of took the time to catalog a lot of these deep space objects in the 1700s, in case you're wondering what this M that thing is about. And now Charles Messier is a subject of another video of mine because basically he started creating a journal of things that he thought were a waste of his time. He was busy trying to get paid looking and discovering comets so rich people can be named after them. And he'd spend like 2 weeks at a time staring at what he would think was a comet and then realize it's not a comet. Eventually he'd get so frustrated because he was striking out that he made a list of things to disregard, essentially. Now, if he had maybe spent a little more time investigating some of these things on his list, particularly M1, the very first thing he disregarded, he'd probably be a lot more famous of an astronomer these days because there's some massive discoveries that he didn't even know he was looking at and just kind of disregarded. So that's what M that is about. It's named after Charles Messier. It'll be a subject of another video because he goofed. He goofed bad. So M78 again is visible with most telescopes, and if you're done kind of looking at M42 or M43, the Orion Nebula and Demirans, and you're kind of bored, swing on up to M78. It's pretty close by, a little harder to find, but it's a really good choice for viewing. Now, one intriguing feature that spans across Orion is the Barnard's Loop. It's a faint kind of red tendril that arcs across the left side of the constellation, encompassing everything from like M78 on the top side to like M42 on the bottom. Now, it kind of runs its way between Beetle Juice and Orion's belt. The nebula M78 in this general area on the top is where the top of the loop sort of starts. It arcs its way down past Orion's belt, Analtak, and its two nebulas, past Orion's sword. And then it kind of passes really close to Safe, the right foot, before it kind of terminates to the left foot, which is Rigel in the constellation. So it's a really massive structure. And here's a photo of it right here. It's a noteworthy member of Orion's really unbelievably rich collection of celestial objects. Would be kind of going up to Misa, the Orion's head. That is the Angelfish Nebula, and it kind of engulfs Orion's head, and it literally looks like an angelfish. It's massive in size, although it's really, really faint. So you're not going to be able to see it with 90% of the telescopes that are out there. You're going to have to, again, get some software and stack some images up to kind of collect enough light to see something that faint. But it's really cool looking. It kind of looks like, to me, like one of those Swedish fish gummies that you chew on. But it also looks like an angelfish, and I'm a scuba diver, and I can confirm that's what angelfish look like. So as you can see, the Orion Nebula or the Orion Constellation is a really bountiful place. It's kind of worthy of a second look, and it's worthy of more than just a casual glance. So next time you're out and you kind of catch sight of the Orion Constellation, maybe you'll see it with newfound appreciation. It's one of my favorite constellations, particularly during the winter time and early spring. Cygnus is my favorite during the summer. That's a swan. There's a lot of cool stuff going on up there too. I'll make a video about that. But feel free to use this video and as a guide looking up at the Orion Constellation, and hopefully you'll see just how much drama is going on up there. I mean, it's a really cool place, and there's a lot going on. It's not just a patch of a dark sky with a couple stars forming a constellation. A lot of famous things happening there. So my name is David Hoyt, and again, this is Celestial Safaris. If you like this kind of content, do me a favor, sign, subscribe, put a comment down at the bottom that you did subscribe, just so I can thank you. And feel free to post any questions you want down there, anything I didn't clarify on enough. I'm more than happy to get back to you. I'm pretty reactive with that. And I'll answer your questions. And I hope to see you around on my channel. Have a good one.